All right. Yeah, so let's wait, give a couple more minutes folks to join. You all see my screen? So meanwhile, I'm going to get the environment up and running. Go to server and bring up what we were working on last time around. And the IDE, here it is. And we were working on assignment 3, right? Pretty big. Huh? Here. There we go. All right, let's ready. Let's see. Right. Let's see, is a question in the chat? All right, welcome everybody. Let's see. Yeah, so we had just started learning about React.js, right? As a JavaScript library that it's going to allow us to create dynamic content, right? Be able to respond to user input, right? And dynamically compute what the user interface is based on the state changes of the application as a user interacts, right? As they, type content or move their mouse, click, drag, right? And they create a stream of events to our user interface, right? And the user interface responds accordingly, right? Showing that that things are changing, right? As we introduce data into the system, right? The internal state of the application changes over time, right? And the user interface has to reflect those changes, right? To give feedback, visual feedback that something is happening, right? So up to this point, we've been focusing on creating a React.js to be somewhat data-driven, right? So how do we convert data structures, right, or some data representation, some information, right, into an equivalent user interface. Then we'll discuss not only React.js reading data, right, and then transforming it into a user interface, but then how, as users interact with the user interface, affects the data, and that data then is reflected into the user interface. So that cycle, right, where the user manipulates a data structure, the data structure is converting to user interface, which is viewed by the user. The user generates events that updates the data, right? And you have the cycle of me interacting. I see the feedback. I interact. I see the feedback, right? So up to this point, we have we're focusing first on just rendering really simple stuff. Today we're going to get into a little more on make it a little more data driven, right? So here's a data structure. How do we convert that into a user interface, right? Then next week, right, we'll start talking about how is it that this data structure can change, evolve over time, right, as users generate events into the system. Okay. So anyway, so that's the plan. We did start working on the third assignment. I think we got about a third of it done last time around. We worked on mostly JavaScript exercises, just learning about the language, right? Just variables, functions, the arrow function, being able to pass data to functions as objects or as primitive data types, right? We talked about destructors, all sorts of new features that were introduced in ES6, right, in 2015. Spreaders, right? Map functions, filters, finders, right? All those really good stuff about how to manipulate objects, manipulate arrays, right, and whatnot, right? So let's review real quick where we left off last time, right? And so we're gonna keep going. We're using the assignment as a means of learning new features, new skill sets, right? And then towards the end of the assignment, we're asked to to apply those skills, right, to actually build something, right, which is the Kanbas application that we started, in the last couple of assignments, and now we're asked to refactor that and reuse that to bring it into the React.js world, right? Bring it from the static HTML, static CSS into the dynamic React.js world. Okay. So anyway, so that's the plan for for today and the next couple weeks. Let's see. We'll be working through some of Kanbas. So I believe we might get to it. Yes, probably yes. All right, so let's see where we left off. So this is these are the exercises we got through last time. I think we got up to function destructing. That's as far as we got. Right, we went through JSON objects, template literals, finder methods, map functions, right? Working with arrays, the ES6 and ES5 functions, right? If, else, Boolean. So some really, really simple stuff. And then we got into more thorny things such as the function destructor. Okay. So let's go through some additional exercises. In particular, I'd like to discuss navigation, right? Being able to navigate between screens, right? Also pass information across from one screen to another screen, right? And how that can drive the user interface experience, all right? So yeah, let's see. We got to arrays, templates, implementing, and also, I've shared this source code with you in my repository, right? And it should all be available in the repository for this class, for this course, right? If you go to the A3 branch, right, you should be able to find all the source code that we've been working on together, right? And all the labs are here, right? And all the code is there. And please feel free to reuse this code for as your own. I mean, you could just copy and paste this and submit it as your own assignment. But basically, that's what the labs are asking you to do anyway, right? They're asking you to copy paste the source code into your own repository, right? Get it working, right? Massage it a little bit so that it's presentable, and then submit it. So it's not far off from what I'm asking you to do. Okay. So yeah, so feel free to use the repository, and it's available through the Canvas down here, the GitHub. Oh, there's the repository actually. Yeah, this is the repository, right? And if you go to A3, you can see the source code there. Oh, maybe I haven't pushed. Okay, no, this summer. It's from last semester. Let me actually hide that. Yeah, so let me, oh, it's hidden, you can't see it. Yeah, so go through my repository, right? And you can go and find it for this semester, FA23, 5610 FA23, okay? Yeah, and feel free to use it as your own. Yeah, so let's take a look at the remainder of the assignment. We got to function destructing. This is the last exercise that we worked on, right? And so let's go on to the next exercise, the implementing navigation. So very, very important, right? These, we are implementing what is called a single page application, right? And what we mean by that, right, is that we only open, right, only render a single HTML document, right, which is our index.html, right? If you've seen our source code, right, in public, the only HTML document that ever gets loaded is this one, right, the index.html. And then we use React.js to inject all our content programmatically into this single div, right, ID equal root, right, which is very similar to what we did, late last week, right, when I was, illustrating, demoing how would you use JavaScript, right, to dynamically render this, without React.js, right? So what are the first principles, right, of rendering things dynamically using JavaScript? And we were able to do just that. We were able to grab this element by its ID, right, and then just pump just strings in there, right? And we were able to render content. So yeah, so this is the only HTML document. So the question is, well, what if you have a whole bunch of documents, right? A whole bunch of screens. How do you navigate? It used to be that you had individual HTML documents, right? So you had the dashboard had its own HTML document. The assignments had its own screens and HTML documents, and then you created hyperlinks that would navigate. You would click the hyperlink, and it would navigate to other screens, right? That's how you would create navigation in multiple screens. But now we only have one HTML document, right? So where would you go, right? So we're not supposed to leave ever that index.html document, right? That single one. So if you can't, navigate between HTML documents, how do you implement navigation, right? So that's a legitimate question. So yeah, so we are implementing a single page application. We're never going to navigate away from that index.html. Instead, what we're going to do is that we are going to use JavaScript, right, to decide when to display certain things, right? We're going to have logic, and if we want to go from one screen to another, basically with using JavaScript, we're just going to use that div as our canvas, right? And we're just going to erase the content from where we're going, where we're coming from, right? And then replace it with another component, right, of where our target screen is, right? And we can do that programmatically, right? So I'd like to illustrate a little bit of that. So for instance, right, here we have several pieces of content. We have the hello world screen, right? We have the labs screens that has all our labs. And then notice that we have a Kanbas screen, and they're all displaying all at once. Yes. And the way we're doing that in our code is by, in our app.js, we are loading all three at the same time, right? Right, so we're displaying the hello world screen, which is rendered by this one. We're loading the labs screen, and we're loading the canvas screen. So we would like to be able to instead, display one or the other, right, depending as we navigate from one screen to the other. So what we would like to be able to do is, for instance, be able to say, oh, well, I only want to see the canvas screen, right? So ideally, I would just somehow comment this out programmatically, save, right? And notice that we would see only the canvas screen. See that? Or we would say, well, I only really want to see the hello world screen, right? So somehow I would remove this content, right, and save it, and then we would navigate, right, to the hello world screen. Or labs, I want to only see the lab screen, so I would comment out those two, right, and then I would see only the labs. See that? So how do we do that? So we did talk about, let's see, implied return template find, the being able to conditionally display certain pieces of content, right, programmatically. For instance, we would say we can, for instance, encode here this as an expression as opposed to being a hard-coded HTML call to this tag. We could wrap this in an expression that would be the result of some calculation. For instance, we could say that this could be part of a Boolean expression that if I combine it logically with a Boolean expression, I could control whether I see or I don't see something, right? Because what the behavior here is that the whole expression gets evaluated to the equivalent string representation, right? And turns out that true and false, right? The keyword true and false don't have any string representation, right? They're just blanks. But if you combine them in a Boolean expression, the resulting expression, the resulting string is the resulting of that expression, right? So if you say true and anything, you get anything, right? You get that other something, right? So if true anded with anything or with something, you get the something. Now that something, if it's false, then you get false. But if you get true, then you also get true, right? So this expression here allows us to turn on or off, right, this particular piece of content on the right-hand side, right? So notice I save this and I still see hello. Let's see, I think there's a question on the chat. Why this doesn't trigger JavaScript syntax errors? Good question. So this language is not pure JavaScript. Okay, this language is not pure JavaScript. Yeah, so this language is called JSX, right? And we discussed this in the previous lecture, right? And somebody pointed out, right, that it would be easy, it would be helpful, right, if instead of using this extension of JavaScript, which is somewhat misleading because this language is not pure JavaScript, right? It's instead it's a new language called JSX. It's a mixture. It's a syntactical mixture between JavaScript and XML, right? XML language, which consists of a whole bunch of pointy brackets everywhere, tags, right? That are open, close, and that have bodies, that have attributes, right? That have all that XML good stuff syntax, right? And the language tries to blur the line between these two languages so that they can be used interchangeably, right? So you can at some point be doing JavaScript, then all of a sudden you are in the XML world, right? Then with these curly brackets, you're back in the JavaScript world, right? That you're escaping from the HTML world back into the JavaScript. This is an expression that gets evaluated, right? So yeah, you can mix and match the languages. Okay, so yeah, that's why you don't get the syntactical error. So anyway, so this is an expression that evaluates to whatever the right-hand side of the predicate is, right? So you get hello world. So notice if I say false here and I save, notice that hello goes away. See that? And I can do the same thing with all of these. I can say, I can put them, false and then the labs go away. See that? Or here the Kanbas, I can say false and, right? And then the Kanbas goes away. None of them are true, right? And they all go away. And I can then turn these on at will. I can say, well, I want to bring back the hello world, right? I save and notice that I bring the hello world, right? Or I can instead just bring back the Kanbas, right? Get the Kanbas. See that? So based on this, I could build a logic, right, or a mechanism by which I can navigate, right, from one screen to the other based on this on and off, choosing what is it that I want to display. It could be something as, I could have a string here that says the screen that I want to display, right, is Kanbas, right, capital K. And then these expressions might be something such as, if the screen is equal to, hello, then I display hello, right? And you know, if the screen, so again, this is a Boolean expression. So if screen is equal to you know, labs, then I display labs, right? Or if this screen is equal to Kanbas, right, then I display Kanbas. And then I can, you know, based on the value of one constant, I can then control what you see and what you and what you display here, right? So I can change this to say hello, right, and this changes to hello. See that? Or I can change this to labs, right, and I can see labs, right? So the what we would need to determine now is how is it that, you know, we can you know, maybe create a component, right, that when you click on something, right, this particular constant changes over time, right? And then you navigate between multiple places. Yes. Well, there is already a library that builds on this idea, right? But instead of having a variable or a constant that controls what you see on the screen or which component do you render, instead, it's a library that is driven by the URL, the path here, the path of that you have here. So that based on what the URL says, right, we can trigger whether we display one or another piece of content. Make sense? Right. So yeah, so let's introduce to you that library. All right, that library is React Router DOM. React Router DOM. Right. So let's install it. So I'm going to copy here. I'm going to go to my IDE. I'm going to stop this for a second. I'm going to install the React Router. There's actually two libraries, right? One is the base library, right? That is useful for across multiple devices, not only web, right, but also useful for mobile applications, right? And so, but there is a library that is specific. The React Router DOM is specific for web because it works with the DOM, DOM, right? So let's install that too. Install both libraries. So once we have that, we can then start the server again. Start the server again. Okay. And so now we can bring in the hash router. So the hash router, which is part of that library, right? We surround our entire application with a hash router. And now you can create logic like this, right? Logic that looks like that, but driven by the path at the top or patterns, what you see on the URL. So that, you know, if you say something localhost yada 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 slash Kanbas, I want to display Kanbas. Or if I have yada yada yada, you know, slash labs, I want to render labs. Right. So that's the beginning of navigation. Right. Navigation is basically mapping, you know, what URL maps to what HTML document you want to see or what content you want to see. Right. So yeah, so let's implement that. So the way you implement it is as follows. You create first, you declare routes, right? You declare a collection of routes, right? That is going to allow us to create some logic of saying, hey, if you see this on the URL, display the hello world, right? If you say slash Kanbas, then display the Kanbas. If you see slash labs, then labs, right? So the way you do that is by using the route, and you can declare. You can say, you know, if you see hello, right, in the URL, if you see that in the URL, render the hello component, right? Notice that all of a sudden it's not rendering anything, right? Because we commented out our content and we entered this route, right? And what this is really doing is that it's declaring, like several of my IDE already is suggesting. This is basically creating like a switch case statement, right? It's like a switch that says, hey, if the path is matches this pattern, then render this, right? If the path matches this other pattern, then render that, right? Or that, right? So it does a mapping of what you want to see. Let's see, there's a question on the chat. Is it necessary to put routes inside of the div? No. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. This is me because I want to be able to collect different things. Like for instance, I might want to put stuff in here, React Labs or something. Notice that React Labs renders all the time, right? Because it's outside of the switch case statement, right? It's outside of the logic of whether so this is the only one that says that the following components will be rendered only if certain things are true, right? But anything that outside of the routes, right, is renders normally, right? They're always rendered, right? They're not subject to the logic of whether I should or should not render. Whereas these hello world labs and Kanbas are subjective, right, to render only if the path matches this pattern over here, okay? So yeah, so I don't see anything, so I would need to create a route, right? I need to create a path here that matches that pattern, right? So how do we do that? So notice this as hash router, right? So hash router means that it uses as a mechanism for navigation, uses a hash in the URL, like that hash. See that? And then after that is the pattern. So for instance, if I say hello, notice it renders the hello. There it is, right? Or if I say Kanbas, notice that it renders the Kanbas. See that? Or if it says labs, then it renders the labs. See that, right? So basically, this is the basis, right? One of the pieces, half of the piece, right? Where yes, based on the URL, we can display different things, which is basically navigation, right? Navigation is being able to display different pieces of content, right, based on the path, right? It used to be that these were actual HTML documents, right? That you were saying, oh, I want that document over there, go fetch it, right, and render it. Here we don't have that. Instead, what we're doing is saying, well, my screens are just functions, right? Each screen is a function, and that renders the content. And this, what this is doing is it says, well, if this path matches, then render that content. If this is the other one, then render some other thing. Make sense? Okay. Yeah, so now it's kind of one of the nice things is that the history, right, of the back button and the forward button still work just the same as normal links, right? If you were using HTML and whatnot, right? So that works perfectly the same way, right? But it's also still kind of annoying having to type the URL, right? Ideally, you would have links that you can click, right, to navigate to different places. So how do we do that? We could use anchors, right? But anchors, they really want to navigate, right? They really want to be clicked, and then you would give an href location where you would want to go, right? So we're not going to do that. So instead, we're going to use an equivalent of the hyperlink that does that. They render they look just like hyperlinks, right? But they don't cause the page to go out, right, somewhere else, right? It stays inside of the single page, right? So let's create those links. So links is with the link component, right? And you can create something that looks very much like a hyperlink. This is the equivalent of the href. Where do you want to go, right? And then the text that you want to be able to click, right? And they render just as you would expect, right? You can say, save, and there it is. There's my hello. And if you click it, what it does is that it puts in the URL, it puts that in the URL. So notice it says labs right now, but if I click on hello world, there it is. See that? It changes to /hello, as if I would have typed it, right? Including the hash in there, right? And it works in tandem. This works in tandem with a particular route, right? And so I can create all the other links for the labs and for the Kanbas, right? And there it is. So that if I click on Kanbas, I show Kanbas, the labs, right? Hello world. I can navigate between all of these, right? So basically, we brought back navigation, right? Something that we had lost, right, when we left HTML and anchors and whatnot and multiple documents, right? That we could navigate between the multiple HTML documents. Now we're back, right? We can implement, navigation between multiple components, right? That each component is implementing perhaps a different screen. Okay. All right. Excellent. Yeah. So something really cool also is that we can create sub routes, right? Or routes that are within routes. Right? So, for instance, labs, right? When I click on labs, right now we have assignment 3, but eventually we're going to have assignment 4, assignment 5, assignment 6, right? And so at some point we want to be able to navigate through the assignments as well, right? But where would that be better handled? Ideally, it would be handled exclusively within the labs, right? So that we don't have to, litter the apps.js with every single possible, URL combination, right? That with every single possible screen. If we have dozens of screens or hundreds of screens, it would be very, very cumbersome to having all of them handled here. We could, but we're not, right? So instead, we can create a subset of routes that deal with assignment 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth, right? Same thing with Kanbas, right? When we get to Kanbas, we want to be able to navigate to the account, to the grade screen, right? To the module, to home, right? To multiple different screens. So we do need to handle sub routes, right? So the way we could do that is by saying, creating a /* a pattern here, a pattern match that says that, yes, I'm going to navigate to labs if it starts with labs and then, follows with anything, right? So for instance, if I say, if I say labs, but then if I also say, A3 for assignment 3, oops, did I save this? I didn't save it. There it is, right? I saved it now. So now I still render the labs, right? Regardless of whatever I have here. Doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter, right? It could be something fairly complex, right? It doesn't matter. It matches the labs and then star, right? Anything that match. Notice that if I didn't have star, it would not match. So notice it doesn't render the labs, right? The labs would only be rendered if I explicitly just say /labs, nothing afterwards. Okay, so this only works, right? /A3 only works, right, if this has a slash at the end with a star. Make sense? So I'm inside the labs. Now, once I'm inside the labs, I want to be able to maybe navigate to a whole bunch of different assignments, right? So for instance, if I had multiple assignments here, so right now I only have A3. Actually, no, do we have A4? No, we don't. But let's create some dummy content here, right? So just to get us started there, we have a index.js where we have a function and we have assignment 4, right? And then we have the content for assignment 4 and similar for, I'm just going to copy that into assignment 5. Yeah, I'm going to just change a few things here. There we go, assignment 5. So now we have the different assignments and we all bring them into labs, right? So in labs, we can bring all those assignments, right? So we have assignment 4, there it is, right? We have assignment 5, right? And so notice there they are, right? They're the assignment 4. So at the bottom of assignment 3, right? Because that's how I'm rendering it. But I don't want to render all of them at the same time, right? I only want to render based on the pattern here, right? If I see A3, I want to see the assignment 3. But if I see A4, right, I want to see assignment 4, right? Or if I say A5, I want to see assignment A5. So how do we do that? So same thing, right? Now, we don't reuse hash router. Hash router only is one hash router at the top of the application, right? And then you leave it alone. Then what you do to create nested routes, you can use, again, the routes and the route, a routes and then a whole bunch of different route, right, for each route, right? So let's do that. So instead of having all 3 assignments, I'm just going to blow them away for now. I only have labs, right? And what we're going to do is that we're going to create we are going to create a route here. We'll say routes. There it is. And then in here, we're going to create route. Okay. So notice the slash at the beginning. See that slash? So that slash won't work, right? So if I save, right, this actually won't match the A3. Won't match. So if I say A3, oh, okay. All right. So yeah. So notice that I don't have to put labs in front of it, right? I don't have to put labs in front of it because I'm already in labs, right? The app.js, right, already with labs puts me into the labs component, and then from there on, it's whatever follows labs, right, which is A3, right, and then it renders A3. Okay, I can do the same thing now with A4. I can say A4 will render A4, right? So that if I say, A4, right, it renders the labs for A4, right? And then I can do another one, A5, right? So I can say navigate to A5, right? And then I can, go back and use the back, forward and back button, right, to navigate between the various screens, right? So basically we can navigate. Now, it'd be nice if I had links for this, right? I can make a link and say, div class name, let's see, nav pills, right? And we can have link to A3, and this is a link, so let's bring that in. So link, and then this would be A3, right? So this would be assignment 3. What are you complaining about? Link. Are we not bring? Oh, router DOM maybe. There we go. So there's my link, assignment 3, and I can create several others. So let's create a couple more, assignment 3, 4, and 5. So 4 and 5, right? This would be 5, this would be 4, right? There they are, right? And it allows me to navigate to, oops. Okay, so this would be /labs, like that, right? The full-blown URL. Labs, refresh. So yeah, so A3, A4, and A5. See that? So I can navigate through all of them. Make sense? Let's see, a question on the chat. Hi, Prof. If we class rather than class name would still work on JSX, we'll reject it. So it will work, but you will get warnings on the console. The console will complain. So you should always look to see if there's any complaints on the console. Let's see, any complaint? Yeah, so for instance, the map function is complaining, for instance, right? So React.js is complaining a few things that I might have forgotten, right? Yeah, for instance, all the maps adding and removing data from arrays, right? Is complaining that I missed a few things. So for instance, if you instead of using class, right, and you start a class name and you start using class like that, there will be a complaint, right? It'll say something like, yeah, don't use class, right? You should use class name. Okay, still works, right? But it is complaining. Right? So yeah, so you should absolutely keep using class name. Yep. So yeah, there it is. So we can make navigations, right, between multiple screens. What if you just have A3 without slash? If you had A3 without slash, where over here? Yeah, you mean here? Is that what you mean? I believe that will still work. Yeah, that still works. And actually, I always leave it out without the slash. I actually leave it out without the slash. So that also works. Okay. But the main point here is that they are built from the outer one, right? The parent one that creates the whole route. Let's see. Thank you. Also, to be a proficient JavaScript developer, we have to read and understand the Emacs release. Yes, check the item. They mentioned that it's required for developers. It's not, and when try reading their release, I couldn't make a lot of sense. We just rely on the documentary, but the original evidence Swiss release. Yes, absolutely. And you know, most of what you're going to need in this course, right, is what we're giving you here, right? We are covering the main features of the language that are in particular most useful in React.js. So I mean, there's tons of other things like, you know, classes and whatnot. We have been even though classes used to be very prominent feature in React.js, that have, you know, over time, over the last several years, have fallen out of favor. Like, for instance, we very rarely use classes anymore for React.js, even though, you know, they used to be a huge part of React.js. They're still, you know, supported and folks are still implementing, but most of the industry has moved on to just using plain functions, right? So yeah, there's tons of other features of the language that you know, we just don't get to use in React.js as much. All right, for the assignment, do we need to move the classes from public to source? Yes, you need to move the CSS, right? Any index.css that you have, you know, copy them over, right? And also any HTML you know, code snippet, you can copy the HTML snippet and then paste them to build your components, right? And I'll show you to do that, some of that today. Okay, so we can navigate. Let's move on. So as for navigation purposes, you can highlight. You know, you can not only can you change the URL by using link, right? And also and you can use routes to display different content, but you can also, right? You can also read what current path you have here, right? What does it say here? What path is it? Okay. And let me show you. You can read that path by using what is called a hook, a use location hook, right? So this is a function that is declared as part of the React Router DOM library, right? That function returns meta information about, right, where you are in the URL, right? So you can put this in a constant, right? And we can display it. So let's display it down here. So for instance, let's see, we can say, you know, JSON stringify location. So look what it gives you. You get the path name, which is this here. There it is. See that? If you have query strings, like for instance, if you have name equal Alice, right? So if you encode data, right, and you're passing data crossing the URL, you also get that, right, in the search here. The search, you know, encodes the query string right after the question mark, right? Also, if you had any state, we don't have any state, you know, default, blah, blah, blah. But this is important, the path name, right? We could use the path name, for instance, for highlighting these over here, right? Because if I go to A4, notice that it says labs 4 or labs 5. See that? Look at that, right? So we could programmatically, you know, highlight the URL based on that path, right? So the way to highlight it is that we can add here, active. The active class, this is the same active class that we had in Bootstrap. There it is, see that? Or if I apply it here, active, notice that it applies there, and we can highlight it, right? But we don't want to hard code it. We want to be able to do that programmatically. So how do we do that? Well, it turns out that these attributes in the link, well, any attribute, really, any attribute. Notice the elements here. Notice that it's the path has a string as a value, but the element doesn't have a string, has an expression. It's an expression that gets evaluated, right? What is it? What is the value? It's whatever assignment 3 evaluates to, right? Which is these divs, right? So this whole thing gets replaced by that, yes? But anyway, it's an expression that can do some calculations. Well, we can do that here. We can say this nav link, instead of being a hard-coded string, this could be an expression. I could say, so I can put this in a curly bracket, and then now, instead of being a hard-coded string, this could be a calculated string, right? I could say, for instance, I could say that instead of being the double quoted string, this could be a backtick, right? The backtick allows me to embed expressions in there, right? So you could say, and let's put this in a separate line, like that. Ooh. Like that. And in here, I can put an expression like that, right? So, which is going to concatenate into that string. I can say, well, if, right, the location dot path name, right, is includes, so it's a string, right? It's a string. If it includes the keyword, the text labs, right? Or well, actually no, if it includes A3, if it includes the string A3, so it's a question mark. So this is a ternary expression. So if this is true, then this whole thing should evaluate to active. Otherwise, it should not evaluate to anything, just an empty string. See that? Right. So that is going to programmatically add the active class if this says A3. So if I click on A3, boom, let's see, it's highlighted. See that? If I go to A4, it's not highlighted. Now, if I want to apply the same logic to assignment 4, right, I can just copy this class, right, and just replace mine like that, and change this to A4, right, and do the same thing, right, with A5. I can say, oh, if this is A5. So now they all highlight, right, to tell me where I am as a feedback. Make sense? So that's this great feature, right, that where you can highlight things. Now, typically oftentimes this path name is the only thing we care about in the location, right? We typically don't care about the search and the state and the key and blah, 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 right? We only care about the path name. So what can we do? We can, instead of grabbing location, right, we can say const, right? We can use path name. We can use the destructor, right, operator. So we can extract the path name from the location so that our code is a little more compact, right? So only the path name do we care about, right? And this works the same way. Okay. And actually, we can combine these two lines with a single line, right? We can just say path name really is just up here. So you don't really need that second line. Oops. Location. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have the location anymore. So I'm just going to remove that. There we go. It works just the same way. So yeah, so that's our first example, right, of using the destructor, right, in somewhere useful. Everybody good? Okay. All right. Yeah. So the let's see. So the assignments, we had the router. We created the hash router, right? We created the routes to navigate to labs and Kanbas. Then we created. Oh yeah. So notice that in our example here, when we click on labs, right? If we go to Hello World, Kanbas, when we click on labs, nothing shows. not until you click on assignment 3, then we actually see something, right? So there's no like default. There's no default lab, right? If I click on labs, it's just /labs, right? I don't know which one you want, right? So I kind of would like to be able to define a default place where I am navigating, right? So for instance, in here, in the routes, I like to be able to say, well, the default place I would like to see is the assignment 3. That's the first one that I want to like to see. So there's several ways of doing it. You could say, you can paste these twice and say that if it doesn't match anything or it's just slash, right, then render assignment 3. So now if I just go to labs, since it doesn't match anything, it's kind of like a default, right? Then render A3. But notice that it's not highlighting because it doesn't have the A3 there. So I don't like that option, right? So instead, a better option, let's see, there's a question on the chat. Can we do A or here? Can we do A or here? Something like slash or A3? Not sure what you mean, but let me see if I can answer the question. Let's see if this answers your question. So what we can do is that instead of now that path, right? What we can do is that we can say that if it doesn't match anything, right? If it's empty, there's just slash. I want to navigate to assignment 3, right? I can say navigate. That's also part of the React router DOM, right? And we can say that we want to go to, right, assignment 3, A3, right? So there it is, right? So now if I go to labs, notice that it automatically navigates to /A3, right? And it highlights assignment 3, okay? Let's see, a question in the chat. Something like path. Oh, yeah, you could. Absolutely. You could have in your logic here, right? In your logic, you can say, right, if it matches A3 or if it doesn't match anything. Absolutely. Yes. But I think this is a better solution, right? That it is clear where we are, right? In the URL, it says you are in A3, as opposed to just saying slash, right? And then we just default to assignment 3. Okay. Yeah. So the assignment does ask you to create a default also for here, right? Because notice that if we navigate, it doesn't show anything. So in our app.js, we are also going to create a default. We're going to say that if it doesn't match anything, then we are going to navigate. So this is navigate to, right? And the default, I believe, is labs. There we go, right? So that's the default thing that you would see. Or you can make it Kanbas. You can say Kanbas, right? So that if you go to the route, right, now it would always navigate to Kanbas. Okay. Yeah. Let's see what else. Okay, so plenty of things about navigation. So let's take a look at now. I believe we're going to take a look at how to pass encoding path in the parameters in the path. Meaning, if I am navigating to another screen, right, I would like to be able to add parameters, maybe, right, to that path, and then the target URL, right, the other component can maybe read those components, those parameters, right, and do something with those parameters. Okay. So in particular, we see that in the courses, right? If we go to dashboard and I click on a course, if I click on a course, notice that the URL, encodes some data in the path, 152.736, that the target screen can grab that and say, oh, you want me to show that particular course with that primary key? Let me go fetch it from the database, right? And let me render it for you, right? So that if I go to some other course, right? So I go to this other course, and then it would be some other ID. See that? So I would display different courses depending on the ID. Yep. So let's see how we can do that. So first, let's create a really, really simple addition component, right? That can add two numbers, right? So in the A3 assignment, would you say create add.js? I'm going to paste that in there. And this implementation, what it does, right? It's using the use params hook, right? Also part of the React Router DOM library. And what this does, right? Just like use location, parses the URL, parses this URL to try to extract the location and things like that. This one's a little more nuanced, right? So what it does is that if you have parameters, encoded in that URL, what it'll do is that it will create an object out of that. It will parse the URL. It creates a nice little parameter object from which you can then extract the pieces that you want using the destructor operator, right? You can extract the pieces. And then once you have those values, you can do whatever you want with them, right? Here, we're just simply, adding stuff, right? Adding stuff in the arithmetic addition. Okay. So yeah, so let's take a look at building a little user interface that can that we can pass this component, encode some values so we can sum, add a few things. Okay. So yeah, so let's see how we implement that. So we have that. So now let's create a little routes and links, and that is going to encode some data, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And is going to pass it to the add component, right? With the names of the parameters, right? So it's going to create the object with the parameters, and we have to name those, the keys of that object. And this is how we do it, where we use colons, right, to build the object. So let's try it. So let's copy this. Let's create a component called params or path params with the following content, right? So let's paste that in there. Perfect. And then in our assignment 3, right, let's load up the path parameters. Okay, there it is, right? So that in here, there it is, our path parameter is rendering these hyperlinks, right? The link but that has 1 + 2 and the link of 3 + 4. See that? There it is, these two links. Okay. And then now also declares a route saying if the URL matches with A3 add, right, and then the placeholder, then I will render add. Okay. And that's what these hyperlinks do. They create the pattern /slabs/A3/add/1/2, right? So notice that right now the add component is not rendering at all. And that's because the URL up here doesn't match anything, right? So let's do this. So if we click on it, notice down below, down here, on this corner, when I hover over this, you'll see that it says /labs/A3/add/1/2. So if I click on it, it's going to update the URL up there. It's going to match the route. Is going to render the add component, right? So let's do that. Click on, oops, it didn't work. Add A3, add 1. Did I copy something wrong? Let's see. We loaded the path parameter. Oh, we never we never added the add component. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, we did add it to the path parameter, right? The path parameter has the add component. Why did this not load? What's going on? A3 is rendering. Oh, okay. Probably because in our labs, where's our labs? We rendered A3. Actually, we need to say that this renders A3 and anything afterwards. There it is. Okay. Okay, there it is. So if it's A3 and anything, before was just saying you will render A3 only, right, if it matches that, right? So it's a slight different, it's a slight difference, right? So that means that I don't really need the A3 here then. There it is, right? Okay, so yeah, so it just A3 puts me in the assignment 3 component, and then from there on, I can move on to down further to the other paths, right? So notice that if I click on 1 plus 2 or 3 plus 4, notice that these values are changing dynamically, right? And you can absolutely expect a question like this on the quiz. On the quiz, right, I'll give you some examples of some links, some routes, right? And I'll ask you, what happens if you click here? What happens if you click there, right? And notice that also as you click, right, as you click, new links appear, right? And then depending, so say this one appears, but then if I click on that link, then some more links appear. And if I click on that link, then more content appears. See that? Right. So you could have like a nested routes, right? Each one displaying more links, displaying more routes, more links, more routes, right? That allow you to dig more into a user interface. Yes. So yeah, you can expect a question like that in the quiz. Let's see a question in the chat. For the link, can it simplify it to add like what you did in the path? You mean here? Like put a slash in front of it? Not sure what you mean. Yeah, that works too with a slash in front. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you mean. The above. You mean for highlighting? Chen Rong? You mean by highlighting with ORs? And so can we replace link to labs A3? Link labs, can we replace link to labs A3? Where is that? You mean here? You mean these links here?
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, so there in can you go back to the previous file that you were on?
We were in path parameter.
Yes, so my question is can you simplify the link to equals to lab A3 add or something like that to the same structure that you use for path? Like can we just say slash add 1/2, or do I have to put in the full parameter in there?
Oh, okay. So if you're in labs, right?
Yeah.
Um,
This is like
so yeah, yes, you could I think you could do this. Wait a minute. Like that. If you do relative, right, if you say relative like that, right?
uh-huh.
Then if you hover, notice at the bottom, see at the bottom it says slash labs, right?
Mhm.
So what it does is that it prepends, right? It prepends what's already in the right, what's already the current URL, right? So that is so so this is using a relative path, so it's relative to the current location that I'm in. So this works as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you could either use an absolute path or a relative path, right, without the slash, but then you have to understand that you are within a particular context. It's relative to where you are currently at. Okay. That's why I also like to not have the slash here. It makes it clear that this is also relative, right? It's relative to where you are, right? From slabs, A3, right? Yeah, great question. Yeah, so navigation, we worked with location. Okay, so here we have some labs that I think I'm going to leave these to you. So these are examples of what we just did for highlighting the links, right? Where you can excuse me, you can first of all, the CSS files that we already might have with styling, we no longer would use the links, right? So typically in HTML, to bring in a CSS file, you would use link, right? And then rel and then style sheet. The equivalent in React.js is to bring in your CSS from imports, right? So you can import not only other JavaScript files, but you can import CSS files, okay? So the nice thing is that, for instance, Bootstrap, in HTML, we had to load it in every single HTML document, right? Whereas what we did, notice that this path parameters is still being rendered, right, using the Bootstrap library, right? So we only had to load the Bootstrap library at the top level index screen, right? Here in the index.js, this is the root of the entire web application. So this is the only place that we had to load Bootstrap, right? Never again any other screen, right? We only loaded it once. Same thing if you're loading libraries such as Font Awesome, React Router, React icons, right? Any infrastructure library CSS would be loaded here once, right? But then, right, you can load individual CSS files, right, only where you need it. So for instance, if you have CSS that is only needed by this particular component, well, then that component can load and import that single CSS file. This is a nice way of organizing your file system, right? So that you can put the CSS file right next to the component that is styling that component, right? So that instead of having the CSSs all in one folder, right, and the components in another folder, you can bring in those CSS files and put them right next to the same directory, right, where you have your component, which is a nice way of organizing your files. Okay. So anyway, so go through these examples on your own. I did want to talk about, generating conditional outputs, right? We did that, right? We talked about being able to render things based on various regular Boolean expressions, right? Predicates that evaluate to true or to false, right? And then the content on the right-hand side gets rendered or not, right? And that's actually the basis of navigation, right? Let's see. Okay, so let's finally talk about being able to render data, right? That we can convert some object or some array of objects, right? JSON data, right, into a user interface, right? So for that, let me illustrate implementing a really simple to-do list, right? So let's see. So let's create a directory for the to-do, right? So let's under lab 3, we're going to create another folder, say to-do. And in there, we're going to create a to-do item. So the to-do item, I'm going to paste it in here. So let's go over this to-do item, right? So let me remove that. So I don't want to get you confused with this just yet. Okay. All right. So the to-do item here, right? Let's see, what is it doing? It's returning a line item, meaning that this component is meant to exist inside a UL, right? So the parent should be some UL, and this, inside of that UL, instead of having LIs, you would have these to-do items, right? And those render the LIs inside of the UL. Okay. So let's see what that does, right? So let's create here something really simple. So let's create with something really simple. So you have to-do item, and here you would have do something, right? Do something. And now if I bring that over into my my assignment 3, and I bring in the to-do item. There it is, right? It says do something. It's not very pretty, right? But right, it's meant to be used, right? It's meant, notice the styling, right? Class, list group, item, blah, 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 right? So it's meant to be used instead of a UL. So let's do that, right? So let's put this maybe in a UL, and then you have several to-do items, right? So it says to-do item, and there's several of these. Okay, so now and also let's make this into a list group, and notice that now they are rendered like full bootstrap lists, right? And now ideally I would like to be able to configure or parameterize these the data that I want you to actually render, right? So ideally I would be able to pass some arguments, right? Maybe a title, right? And the title says, buy milk. Okay. So this, I mean, that is how you parameterize a tag, right? An XML tag. So you have an attribute and you pass in some arguments, right? Some value in the. So the to-do item is not receiving anything just yet, right? So let's see what it is. So it says, let's say item. I'm passing this title, right? And I'm receiving item, whatever that is, right? So data, I'm receiving some data. I want to show you what actually gets rendered. I want to show you what gets rendered. So I'm going to render it as a JSON string. I'm going to try and stringify it. I'm going to say JSON.stringify data. Okay, notice what we're getting. Look at the object that we're getting. See that? Look at that. We're getting the data that is being received here in this data is actually an object that has as a key, right? Let's go back to this to-do item. It's actually the key of the object is the name of the attribute. See that? And then the value is the name of the attribute. See that, right? So if we want to render the title, actually we would have to do something like data.title. And there it is, buy milk. Okay. So we should be able to just say here, right, instead of do something, I should be able to say data.title, basically, right? Data.title. Okay. Or right, we could use some of our pretty cool features, right? We could say that the title, actually I can destruct it, that the title is data.title, right? I can say just title, like that, title, and it still works, right? The title right there, right? But we know of a much prettier syntax for this, right? We can use a destructor. We can use the destructor operator like that, where we can extract the title out of the data, and this works just the same, right? The title, there it is, buy milk. So it works, right? Or instead of doing this convoluted, we can just have this here, actually right there. See that? As a parameter, so that it can be destructed right when it's receiving the data, when it's being passed. And this is what we're going to do, right, from now on, right? This is what we're going to be doing, right? There's buy milk. So I can pass here a whole bunch of titles. I can say, title, buy milk, pick up kids. Right, there's pick up kids, right? Now, I could have several properties here. So title, I could say, is it done? Done equal true. Now it has to be that has to be a true, as opposed to be a string. I'm using a data type true, right? And I can bring that over. I can say title, I can say done, right? And maybe I can use that and render it maybe as a checkbox, right? I could say input type checkbox and default checked equal done, right? So there it is. So we have, maybe we could put the input field before, right? And whether it's checked is true or not, right? So yeah. So now I could break them out all into individual properties of a to-do list, of a to-do item, or right, or I could have an entire object that has all the data. I can pass you a to-do object, right? So this is so the curly brackets means expression, but then I can put another set of curly brackets because I'm going to pass you a JSON object, right? And the to-do can have, the title, the whether it's done, maybe status, right? Status is completed, complete, right? So I'm passing you two primitive data types, and I'm passing you a to-do object, right, that has that value. So I can receive it here as an argument, right, as the actual to-do object that I'm passing you. And now this could be something like, to-do.done, right, to-do.done, or to-do.title, right? So it's complaining, it's complaining that only one of them has a to-do object, right? All the other ones don't, right? So it's complaining, saying, hey, yeah, I mean, you only passed me the objects for one of them. The other ones are, I don't have, the to-do is undefined, right? So I don't have a done for an undefined. So what do I do? So it's broken. So it's very common that when you pass objects that have a fairly complex data type, it's often very common to do the following: put the whole thing, right, of what might give you an exception because something is undefined. It's very common to do the following: you wrap it inside of an expression, right, and then you say, or wait a minute. So the only place that you really need it is around. Oh yeah, no, like this, right? Yes. Where you say, does to do exist, right? Is it not undefined? And then and okay. It's still complaining because the return doesn't like just returning a single expression. So we could wrap this in a anonymous element like that. There it is, right? So now we're guarding against to do being undefined, right? If it's undefined, then this whole thing doesn't render. It doesn't render at all, right? But if it is defined, then it does render. Okay. So now, right, I can strip out these title and done. I'm not using them anymore, and I can pass these objects to these individual ones. Where I can say, this is by mail, pick up kids. Done? No. And the status is in progress. In progress. Okay. And to do item, check, done. Voice pickup selected. It shouldn't be selected. Okay, I must have checked it, I guess. So yeah, I can pass objects right around to my other fields, other components. Hi, why do we use two curly brackets? Yeah, so the first curly bracket is saying, right, that this is an expression, right, that I'm going to pass you not a literal string, right? If I say quotes, the only thing that I can pass you is a string, right? If I want to pass you some Boolean value or something else, then it needs to be a curly bracket, right? So that's the first set of curly brackets. The second set of curly brackets is that this is a JSON object that I'm passing you, right? That has these properties and these values. The other question is, why are we using these weird, kind of unfinished tags, right, that have no name? Very good question. So first of all, the problem that we're trying to solve is that just an expression cannot be returned, right? A return cannot return just an expression. Maybe could we get away with this? Maybe, wait a minute. Like that without. Okay, so that works, right? So that works, without using the curly brackets, because the curly brackets is used only inside of XML, right? If you go to XML, then you use curly brackets to break out of XML and go back to JavaScript. But here, right, if you start the expression right away, we're never in XML, right? That's why it was complaining that you were using a curly bracket to escape JavaScript, but you were already in JavaScript, right? So you didn't really need the curly brackets because you never left JavaScript. You're still in JavaScript. You don't need the curly brackets because the curly brackets in JavaScript have a very specific meaning, right? As opposed to the curly bracket in XML, right? They are meant as escape characters to come back to JavaScript, right? So here we didn't need it, but nevertheless, I do want to discuss that funny looking unfinished tag, right? So let's put back the curly bracket and these funny looking tags, right? So these tags are called snippets, right? HTML snippets, right? So it's just it's meaning these are abstract groupings of HTML pieces of code, okay? That I do not want these to end up in the DOM, right? Basically, I don't want these to end up in the DOM. And well, what do you mean by that? I don't want it to end up in the DOM. So notice if I look at this, right, in the DOM, they are rendered UL. There it is, right? UL, and then the LIs. See that? Nowhere do you see this. You don't see that, right? Notice if these were divs, if these were actual divs, or anything else, right? If these were divs, then you would see the divs, right? You would see UL, div, and then the LI, which is syntactically incorrect, right? The LIs need to be immediate children of ULs. You cannot have anything in between the UL and the LI. That's why I went with the funny looking tags here, right? Because I did not want to add those to the DOM, right? They're just here used to logically group, right, the HTML content, right, into a singular element, right, a nameless element, okay, that then can be added to the DOM, right? And this is because this is very, very popular amongst React.js developers. Okay, so anyway, yeah. So we have a to-do item, right? We're passing objects and everything. But better yet would be to have all this data perhaps stored in a file, right? With all this data, or even better, right? If we could go out to the database, fetch the data, right? And then render here. We don't have the database just yet. We don't have the server. So let's go out with, just having maybe a JSON file with some data, right? And that's the exercise that you're asked to do here. You have the to-do item that accepts a to-do. Also, this to-do item, by default, if you don't pass anything, it is undefined, right? It's undefined. So you either pass me something, like here, or it's undefined. But you can give it default values, right? So every parameter, every element here, you can give default values, meaning if you don't pass it to me, I can default to a value. So for instance, done, you can default it to be true, right? Title, you could default it to, unnamed to do. Okay. Let's see, is a question in the chat? But if to do is undefined, would still the React page load? It would well, it would not run. Notice that notice that we are only rendering 2 to-dos, even though in our example we have several to-dos. We have these 2 to-dos, and then we have all these 3 to-dos over here that never are rendered. What the heck, right? Where are they? Well, it's because we have this to-do that says that you're only going to render this if to-do is defined, right? This is what it says, right? If to-do is defined, is truthy in JavaScript. We refer to things not being null, not being undefined, not being empty string, not being an empty object, being an array of not an empty array. That's the definition of falsy, right? So so truthy is that we're none of those, right? So if it's something other than null, undefined, empty string, empty array, empty object, then okay, go ahead and render me, right? So that's why the 3 to-dos here are not rendered at all, right? So yeah, we don't get an error. Okay. So yeah, but we can give default values for this, including these objects. I can give you a default value for this object and say, unnamed to do. The done is false, right? It's not done, false, right? And the status is incomplete. Notice that all the other ones now are defaulting. See that? They're defaulting to the predefined, right, default value of to do. Okay, no longer is this ever not defined, right? So we could, remove all this. We could remove all this now, right? We could remove it, the check, because now we have a default value, right? And this would not explode, right? It would not crash because we have a value of to do. But nevertheless, it's always a good practice to just guard your content against something crashing because something's undefined. Make sense? So anyway, yeah, so we can default values, right? And this is great for like rapid prototyping, where you have all these components with data and object, blah, 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 but you don't have data yet, right? So it's very useful to have your components with some default data so you can render it really quick on the screen to see what it looks like, right? Even though you might not have any data. So you could, you can always fill it in with some default dummy data to at least have it display something, right? So anyway, so instead of doing this UL like that, right? Let's create a component that can read a JSON file and then render it, right? So let's do that. So here's the next exercise, right? So we're going to create a to-dos JSON file, right? In the to-dos, we'll say new, our to-dos JSON, and we're going to include that data, right? The title, the status, the done, right? It happens to match the schema of what we're expecting in our to-dos, right? What a coincidence. So let's create a to-do list. So let's create a to-do list component here as well. That what it's going to do, it's going to load our to-do item component. It's going to load the JSON file into a local to-dos constant, right? And then it's going to have a title. It's going to use UL, and then it's going to iterate over each one of the to-dos. And for each to-do object, it's going to return our to-do item. It's going to pass the to-do as an argument, right? As an attribute into the to-do item. See that? Pretty cool. So in our, and then we export it. So back in our lab 3, we can bring in, let's put a ruler in there. Let's bring in the to-do list. And it broke. Touch list? Huh? Touch list. Where's touch list? What? To-do list. Where did it get touch list? Okay, there it is. See that? Those are the that is the to-dos, right? Iterating over that array of to-do objects, passing one at a time, and then being rendered by the to-do item. See that? Pretty cool, huh? Excellent. Let's see. All right, let's take a quick break. And then as we come back, we'll start playing around with the Kanbas application. All right. All right. Yeah, welcome back. Let's continue. Let's see. Before we dive into the Kanbas application, any questions so far? Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the Kanbas part of the application of the assignment. And so here we're asked to bring over a lot of what we've done with the Kanbas application so far in the last couple of assignments, right? We've been creating the several navigation sidebars, right? Several screens, such as the dashboard, the home screen, the grade screen, the assignment screen, and we're asked to port those over, right, into a React.js application. Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through several of the steps that here we are suggesting, right, that is going to set up the skeleton, right, of the application that then would need to be filled in with the details, right, of the of whatever you worked on in the previous assignment. All right. So let's work through the skeleton, right? Creating the skeleton of the Kanbas application, and then we'll bring in some of the content, the styling over, right, from previous assignments. Okay. All right. So let's see. So we already have a placeholder for our Kanbas application, right? So if we click on Kanbas, here we are in Kanbas. So so I'm going to make Kanbas the default navigation, right? That is going to go in there first. And I'm going to just remove everything else, right? So if you want to navigate, you'll have to type it, or maybe we can create a hyperlink, right? We can create a hyperlink in the Kanbas application that would allow us to navigate back. Okay, is that okay? So so because it looks kind of ugly there. So I'm going to go back to my app.js. We had these links, right? So I'm just going to drop them so that we are already in the Kanbas application, right? So that if I go here and I go to the default, it navigates to the Kanbas. And then maybe in the Kanbas application, we can create other hyperlinks that will allow us to navigate to the labs, right, to Hello World and whatever, right, other. And then once we're in the labs, we can then navigate to the other labs. Yes. Okay. All right. So yeah. So let's see what our assignment is suggesting we do. All right. So first is that it's suggesting that we split our Kanbas application into two screens, right, where the left-hand side will be the Kanbas navigation, and then on the right side, we'll have the everything else, right? Which basically, it implements this. You have on the left side, you have the Kanbas navigation here, right? And depending on what you click on, whether account or dashboard or calendar or inbox or history, right? On the right-hand side, you get, all different things, including its own navigation, right? If you go to account, right, you get kind of like the account navigation, right? If you go to a dashboard, the dashboard itself is a navigation, right? That when you click on it, you go to the course, and in the course, you have the course navigation and so on and so forth. Okay. So yeah, so on the left side, the Kanbas navigation, on the right side, everything else. Okay, so let's follow up. Let's follow that suggestion. So let's copy that, and in our Kanbas, let's paste that in. I am using Flex or Display Flex to just display them side by side. I'm not going into styling on how wide the left side should be. for that, right, we can bring in some of the styling from previous assignments, right? But let's leave that for last, right? So first, let's get the basic skeleton going, right? So let's save that. Oops, Kanbas. And so here we should be able to see it. There it is, right? So you have the Kanbas navigation on the left, and you have everything else on the right, right? And depending on what you click on the left, will navigate to various screens. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's continue. Let's first work on the Kanbas navigation. Let's see, there's a question in the chat. For using Bootstrap, won't we need to add it to the package JSON? It's already added. We added it earlier this week, right? We installed it. We did npm install. So it's there already. Yeah, we did that on Monday, I believe. Yep. So yeah, so this one is suggesting that the Kanbas navigation is just basically iterating over an array of account, dashboard, courses, calendar. So I'm going to copy that and create a new Kanbas application component called Kanbas navigation, I believe. So let's actually copy that so I don't mess it up. So Kanbas navigation, there it is. And in there, we're going to create an index file. Now, the cool thing about this is that along with the HTML that you're going to use from your assignments, and you're going to put in index.js, in here, you can also create a dedicated index.css, right? That would be the styling for only the Kanbas navigation, right? And you don't have to load it anywhere else, right? You only have to load it here, right? There's no need to load it multiple times in multiple screens, right? Multiple HTML documents, just here, only here, right? So, yeah, so the Kanbas navigation, we can, oops, not in the CSS, in the JavaScript. So let's look at it, right? So what this is doing is that it's declaring an array of links that are account, dashboard, courses, calendar. And then notice it's grabbing the path name from the URL. It's creating a div with some list group, styling it with a particular width, 150. Although, again, this is different however you implemented it or how I implemented it. Also, it's misusing style. Oh yeah, one thing that we did not, I skipped but there's an exercise for this, right? Is that style in HTML, it can take a string. It can only take a string, right? But in React.js, style can only be an expression, right? It can only be an expression. It cannot be a string, right? And that string, that expression can be, for instance, something like a JSON object, right? A JSON object that has the keys are, common CSS properties such as width, height, top, left, right, things like that, right? Color, right? And then the right-hand side are JavaScript values, right? So for instance, 150, that would be interpreted as 150 pixels, okay? But if you want to do, percent, then that's not a valid JSON expression, right? Then if you want percent, you have to put it inside of quotes, okay? So that's the difference, right? These are JSON objects. But there's an exercise for you to practice that in the assignment. Anyway, so you have a list div, and then we're going to iterate over the links up here. As we iterate, this link is an object, right, that represents each one of these strings or each one of the items in the array, okay? And, right, map, the way we explained it in the assignment, only took one argument. The function in the map only took one argument, but actually you can have at least two arguments. You can have two arguments, right? One of them is the item, each one of the items in the array. And the second one is the index of where you are as you're iterating. So index is 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth, right? Now, most of the times you're not going to need it, right? That index. But here I'm using it in particular because one of the requirements when you use map in React.js, right, is that the item of or the DOM elements that you are rendering, that you are returning, that you are evaluating for each function call, right, should have a key property that whose value is unique, right? And if you have noticed in our browser, if you look at and if you inspect it, you'll notice that there have been several errors, right, that are being printed into the console. And most of those errors, I believe, are complaints that I was using the map function and I forgot to put the key in there. Okay, it's complaining, saying, hey, you render all these stuff, probably in the labs, right? In the labs, I showed you some examples of using the map function, right, to render some UL, right? And I forgot to put the key in there. So here I'm not forgetting. I'm not forgetting my my key, right? And so this is useful for optimization purposes for the underlying React.js framework, right? What it wants to do is that it wants to be able to keep track of all the DOM elements that it's rendering into the browser, so that it maintains a virtual version of the DOM, which is much more smaller and compact and faster to manipulate, right? Much faster than manipulating the actual DOM. And to be able to do the mapping between the virtual DOM and the actual DOM, right? It wants to maintain these keys, right? All the other elements are, because of the structure, they are uniquely identified. But if you have a whole bunch, like an array, right? It might not know, right, which one matches the real line item, right, to the one in the virtual, right? So to guarantee that, hey, this virtual instance here matches the real DOM elements, especially if it needs to re-render or it needs to add elements, remove things, right? For optimization purposes, it needs these unique identifiers. So I did, and so and the way I'm maintaining the uniqueness is that I'm using index. Okay, so 0, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. All right, so yeah, so here you have the 2, and it's mapping to /Kanbas / right, all these. So it's going to be /Kanbas /account /dashboard /courses /calendar, right? And it's rendering as a group item, and I'm checking to see that if the path name includes the particular text here, then it's going to render active. Okay. All right. So it already highlights. Okay. So now that we have the Kanbas navigation, we can maybe bring it over into the Kanbas and replace this, right? So this whole thing, it's already a div. See that? It's already a div. So I could just replace this whole thing with the Kanbas navigation. Let's save that, right? And so that if we navigate here, there it is. See that? Account, dashboard, blah, blah, blah. Now if I click on an account, go /account, and it's not displaying anything, right? And it's because probably our route, right, in our app.js says, well, no, I only render Kanbas if it matches exactly Kanbas. If it's Kanbas and something else, I don't know what that renders, right? So we can fix that. We can go back to our app.js and say, well, it's Kanbas and anything underneath, right? And anything underneath, render there. There we go. So now I can click on dashboard, courses, account, right? And this is changing, and it's highlighting this as being active. Make sense? It says there's a question here. So how would you individually style each of the list items with this way of doing things? For example, how do we put the individual icons in the right place? Yeah, good question. So for instance, in the Kanbas, and if you go to the Kanbas navigation, what you could do is create, it could be a map, right? You could say, you could create a map of, link to icon map, right? And the map might be that, for account, then it's F user, right? For dashboard, for courses and whatnot. So you create a map so that you could then use add an icon here, right? That would create the icon. So which is looking into the map, and the link is the key into that map, right? And it renders the icon, the necessary icon. And I guess I don't have font awesome. Yeah, let me install that. How come I don't have font awesome? So npm install font. Actually, no, we're going to use what is it? React icons. I said we're going to use the React icons. Yeah, icons. To install, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, let's save that. Let's install that. This is a much better icon library. And so here, if you look up a couple of these, maybe font awesome. You look for a user. And so let's grab a user here, maybe. So this is BI, yada, 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 yada. We just copied it. And in here, we can import that. The icon, we say import from React icons BI, maybe. Let's see if it's true. Yeah, all these are the components, right, that represents all those icons. What else? We need a dashboard. Let's see if we can find something for dashboard. Sure. Let's grab one of these, whatever. Let's grab this one or this one. What is the real one? Let's see. I don't remember. Oh, the dashboard. Okay, it looks like that. So one that looks similar to that. Okay, let's grab. Yeah, let's grab that one. And we'll bring it in here. So import that from RI. Always make sure it's actually there. Yeah, it's there. Then courses. Let's see, courses. Courses is like a book. So let's look for a book. So let's see a book as an icon. There it is. So let's grab this icon here. And let's import that. So import FA book from React icon. And what else? Which else do we need? We need a calendar. So let's grab something from a calendar. So let's grab maybe this one. Okay, and let's copy it over and import. Okay, always check to see if the reference matches. So now here in the map, you can actually use these guys, right? So for instance, here would be the components like that. See that? And then these components, these are actual components, right? And build that up here. And this one over here. Oops. Grab that. There we go. Okay. And then here it's not an we don't need li. We just say link map. All right. So let's see what that renders as. I don't know what it renders. Oops, we're not running. Let's run this again. npm run start. Oops, BI user circle was not found in React icons, no? Let's see. BI, it's there. Is it? Wait, BI user circle. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. BI user circle. Why are you not finding it? Was not found in possible blah 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 blah. BI abacus. BI user circle was not found. It is there. Import React icon. Is it? Can't find. Oh, okay. So these need ats. All these maybe. No. Can't resolve blah 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 blah. Let's see what's going on. Let me see the home import blah 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 blah. Yeah. No. Oh, okay. I think we need to do the destructor. We need to destruct these. These are all destructed. Destruct, 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 destruct. There we go. Okay, so notice that we have icons for each one of these. All right. In this case, how could we adjust the size or color of the icon? Yeah, these are fonts, so you can apply styling. Like for instance, you can apply style or classes. You can apply a class, right? So where you can say font size equal 2em, 2em. Right. So notice it becomes twice as big. You can change the color, the foreground color. You can do all sorts of transformations. I would not use styles, right? I would use a class, right? And you would apply it to a style. So for instance, so say we declare we bring in the CSS, right? So we have CSS, and here you would say WD Kanbas navigation and icon, and this would be WD.icon, say, right? And you would say here font size to em, right? And then in here this you would maybe put this class would be WD dash Kanbas navigation, and then your here you would apply all these classes. You could say class name WD icon, right? Yep. And so now I can apply this class to all my icons so that they all look the same. Oops. Did I misspell something? Oops. There it is. What? Which one? BI fill with one L? Where? Did I misspell something? Okay, something wrong with my calendar. My calendar, last name, WD, icon. Okay, there it is. All right, so I styled I resized it, right, with CSS. Okay. Yep. All right. Yeah. So let's go. So we have the Kanbas navigation implemented with the CSS, and you can bring your own CSS, right, from previous assignments, assignment 2 especially, right? So and now let's focus now on the having a route, right, that based on what I want to do is now is that as I click, I'm not going to show everything. Instead, as I click, I want to show different things on the right-hand side. Yes. So let's do that. So for instance, the dashboard screen. First, let's build a dashboard screen, right? But I would say before we do that, let's do a route. Right? Let's do a routing here. So here's the Kanbas navigation. Let's go back to our Kanbas. Here's our Kanbas. So here, I don't want to display all these at the same time. Instead, I'm going to create a route. I'm going to say route, right? And I'm going to say the path. If it's Kanbas account, I'm going to render as an element. For now, we're going to render element equal, and then this expression, right? That expression. I'm going to render h1 for now. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing for all these. I'm going to say route path equal, Kanbas dashboard board, right? Then the element is going to be equal to that h1. Right. So this allows you to prototype really quick to see if the routing is working, right? So route path. Instead, if you have to build the whole component before you can even bring it here, right? That might take you a while before you know that this doesn't work at all, right? So Kanbas courses, right? And element is equal to this expression, right? And it's equal to like that. All right. Yeah, okay, so let's see. Now we probably don't need the canvas here because we are already in the canvas component, right? Route. Route. Oh, we never put inside of a routes, right? There we go. Routes. There we go, like that. Okay, so this is working, right? These are still working, but this is never rendered, right? It's probably because we don't really need this canvas here. We don't really need it because we are already in the canvas. Right, there we go. So we account, dashboard, and courses, right? Because it's listening just to this last one. And we don't have anything for calendar, but we can certainly create something, right? Calendar, and this could be calendar. Okay, there we go. Everybody still with me? So now we can focus on maybe placeholder components for each one of these, right? And then make sure that renders, right? So for instance, we can create under our Kanbas directory structure, right? We can create a whole directory structure for each one of these components, right? We can have under the folder the accounts, right? And under there we can have index.js. And this would be our account component that deals everything with the account component, right? So this could be, function, account, I can't spell. And you have the account component, and we do export, right? We can do the same thing for, and this would be, let's rename this. This would be, the dashboard. And this index, right? This would be, dashboard, and dashboard. Let's do it again for courses. So this, let's rename this to courses, right? And let's just rename these courses, and courses, right? And you would do it also for, calendar and whatnot. So now that these are placeholder components, we can go back to Kanbas and import all of them, right? We can say, import, courses from courses, import, well, actually, we don't have calendar. The only one we didn't have, accounts, right? Import dashboard, there we go. And then we can replace these with the actual components. The components here would be, the account component, right? And this would be the dashboard component. dashboard component, right? And this would be the courses component. Right. So this allows you to, work from top to bottom, right? Work your way into more complex territory, gradually, right? I would absolutely do not encourage you to start bringing all the content over until you have a skeleton of a prototype of this working, that we navigate, the data is being pulled in, I'm displaying the correct information as I navigate to different places, right? So I would first, make sure that the skeleton works before, tackling the complexity of dealing with lots of HTML, lots of CSS, and all that. Okay. So anyway, so let's work on the dashboard first. Let's see if this still works. If I didn't even break something, yeah, it still works, right? Okay, so the assignment then asks us to tackle the dashboard, right? And so the original dashboard that we worked on in the previous assignment was static, right? It was a static piece of HTML, right, that always rendered the same thing. Ours is still also going to be static in the sense that we are dealing with static data, yes, but instead of hard coding all the content, it's going to instead iterate over that and just render using a map, right? That's going to accumulate all the content, right, and then display it, right? So let's we're going to create a small little database. It's not really a database, right? It's just a whole bunch of JSON files, right? That are going to be collected into one big JSON object, right? That we can then pull out and pick out the data that we want, right? So let's create a database, right? It's not really a database. So folder, database folder, and in there, let's create a JSON file that's going to hold the courses data, right? That for now is these, these dummy courses for rocket propulsion, aerodynamics and spacecraft design. You can make your own, make up your own names and whatnot. I am using for primary key the _ID, and that's because I want this to be forward compatible with MongoDB, right? Which we will use a database later, a real database, towards the end of the semester. But I want the data that I'm working in the user interface to be already, right, forward compatible to what this is going to look like when it's a real database. Okay. So anyway, so we have that. And then in our database, we're going to collate all the data, right, into one single place, right, into this index.js. Because we're going to have courses, we're going to have students, faculty, grades, enrollments, right? So there's going to be a lot of information, right? And we're going to collate everything into here. We're going to import the courses. Oops, no, courses. Can't spell courses, from courses.json. There we go. Okay. And we're going to export. We're going to say export defaults, right, in an object that's going to bring in the courses like that. Okay. This is actually a notation that we did not talk about. It's an object. It's an object whose key is courses and the value is also courses. All right. And so there's a syntax that allows you to be more compact, right? Where if the key is the same name as the variable or the value, right? You can collapse it into just courses. Okay. Yeah. So once we have that in the dashboard, right, we can import the database, right? We can import the database. We say import the database from the database, right? And then like that, right? And here we can display it. We can display the whole stuff. We can say, JSON.stringify the database. So we go to the dashboard. Here's all our data. See that? All our courses are there. So I can pick out the courses. I can say, the courses is just the db.courses, right? So I can display just the courses in there. There we go. There's our courses that I could iterate, right, and then display. Okay. Also notice that this renders much better if it's inside a pre. Well, it renders in a single line. You can add tabs and new lines, right, by telling it how do you want to format it, with two characters spacing so that it renders nicely so you can read it. Actually, this is a very useful component, right? Stringify something with so many tabs inside of a pre-formatted element. So let's create a component out of this, right? Like a utility component. Did we do that last time? I forget. In A3, did we do that? Oh yeah, we did JSON pre. Yeah, let's do that. So we're going to import JSON pre, import JSON pre. There we go. And we can just use JSON pre for this, right? So JSON pre, and we don't need that. Yeah, we did that already. Good. Yeah, so now we can iterate and render the courses. Now, the way I decided to render it is as an first a dashboard, right? So let's copy this. So like that, dashboard like that. So render the dashboard, right? And oops, link. Okay, we never loaded link, huh? Oh, I don't have link here. Interesting. Oh, so that's a boo-boo. Oh no, there it is. Wait. Oh, I didn't copy the whole code. That's why. Okay. I only copied this stuff down below. So let's see. Let's see what's the implementation. We have dashboard, and I think it renders. Yeah, there it is, right? I'm rendering as just as a list of the courses. See that? I'm just rendering as a list of the courses in a div of list group, right? And then all these links are hyperlinks, right? With the course name. There it is, the course name. And then the hyperlinks are /canvas/courses. And then I am encoding the ID of the course, right, at the end of the URL. See that? And then so I would need a route that matches that pattern and renders the course, right, in that other screen, right? Also notice the unique key. I'm using the ID for the unique key for the link, right? I could have used index, right? Index instead. Although it's always preferable to use unique identifiers as opposed to just an index, right? So yeah, it renders that. I think in the original dashboard, it renders also the published courses. So we can do that. We can certainly do that. I can say we can do an HR, right? And then in H2 we can display published courses, and this could be a count, right? Could be the length of the array. Could be the length of it. So it'd be courses, courses.length, right? Actually, this is using DB courses. Why are we not using just courses? Interesting. And there it is. So published courses, there's 3 published courses. Okay. Anyway, notice that I am rendering it as just plain old hyperlinks, or just as a list. Obviously, you would render it as a card, right, as opposed to as a line item, right? But again, here I'm just focusing on building the skeleton of the application, so you can then come in, right, and fill it in with your own HTML, your own CSS, right, and style it correctly, right? Yeah. So let's go on. So notice that I still can go to courses, account, dashboard, and I have these over here. Notice that it is navigating to courses. It is navigating to courses because the pattern matches courses / something, right? So there's courses in the path name. That's why it highlights it. It's not like it's then navigate to the courses. It's just highlighting it because the path name is there, right? So yeah, so let's go on here. Okay, so there it is. So in our routes, right, which we already implemented it, right, are in the routes in our Kanbas. So we implemented the routes. Yes, we implemented the routes. We have account, dashboard, courses, calendar. But so account, we never implemented it. I don't think, yeah, this is something that doesn't ask you to implement the account. But the dashboard, right, we implemented it. That works. Courses didn't work, right? Because, okay, so we're going to add this star at the end, right? Because courses has a lot of sub screens, right? So we want to be able to control the navigation of the courses. You're within the courses component. Let's see, there's a question in the chat. I'm assuming to style it as a card, we would change class name card instead of list group, correct? Yeah, it's actually, the card is much more complex than just a div and a link, right? It has actually quite a bit of links, quite a bit of divs, right? So it's fairly much more complex than just a div and a link. So yeah, so take a look at how is it that card rendered. So yeah, if I change this to courses followed by anything, right? Now if I click on this, notice that it navigates to the courses. See that? So from dashboard, if I click on any course, because it has courses followed by anything, right? It navigates to the courses, right? But then it doesn't render anything in there. Okay. So what would we want to also? Oh, notice also we're making the dashboard should be the default, right? So let's do that. Let's add here, right? A navigate. We'll need to import that. So that it's if it doesn't match anything when you in the canvas, it will by default go to dashboard, right? So let's see. So if I'm back in say here, right? Oh, I made canvas the default. Yeah, I made canvas the default, and if it navigates to default, then it kicks you into the dashboard, right? As the default. Nice. Okay. All right. So the courses screen. So in the courses screen, what we'd like to be able to display is that if I navigate to a particular course, it should display the course that you're in, right? The course that you're in, based on the ID that is encoded in the URL, right? And we know how to do that, right? We know how to do that because as you click on this, notice that we are encoding that at the end. I want to be able to parse it. I totally could use the path name. The path name would give me the whole thing. I could look for the last part of this, right? And then use that for rendering the correct course. But instead, I can create parameters, right? I can say courses are followed by something. I don't know what that is. I'm going to call that last part. I'm going to say that this is a course ID or CID, right? No, let's give it a full name, course ID. All right, so I'm matching it there. And so inside of the course, I can then pull out the ID, right? Inside of the course component, I can say, I can pull out the course ID, and destruct it from use params, right? And we'll need to import use params. There we go, like that, right? Oops. Oh, not import, const. And I should be able to render here the course ID. There it is. See that? I can pull the course ID from the URL. See that? If I go to another course, that one, I have a different ID, right? Here I have a different ID. Now, if I have the ID of the course, I can go to my database and fetch that specific course, right? I can bring in the database. I can say import DB from the database, right? And then I can say the course, I'm going to find the course. I'm going to iterate over the array of courses, right? And when the course ID matches the course ID that I parsed from the URL, I have my course, right? And I can totally render my course objects, and not a name, JSON pre. I can pass in the JSON, the actual course. And there it is. There's my course. You see, this is rocket propulsion. or I have aerodynamics, right? Or I have spacecraft, right? So I can display up here the name of the course. I can say instead of the course ID here, I can display the course.name up there. See that? Spacecraft design, or aerodynamics, right? Or spacecraft design, right? Or rocket propulsion. Make sense? Absolutely. Right. Yeah, so we can render that there. Now there's going to be much more stuff under course and the ID, right? Because under here, right, under here, I'd like to not only navigate and have the course, but probably I also want to go to the home screen of that course, right? I want to go to the assignments within that course, right? So I'm going to use this pattern, right, that has the /* at the end, right? So that would allow me to have even further, be able to navigate even further down, not just the ID, but anything else that follows, right? So I'm going to say star. So that's going to bring me into the assignments, into the home, the grades, right? The assignment editor, right? All that jazz, right? So then we have the course navigation, which is going to be rendered like this. So we can create a course navigation under the courses directory. So courses, we have the course navigation, and under there we'll have the index.js. And in there we can display the various links within the course navigation, right? That would allow us to navigate to the home, modules, assignment, grades, and all that. Within the courses that has the particular course ID, followed by home, modules, blah 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 blah, right? So let's bring that into the courses, right? And so to bring it into the courses, we're going to bring in the course navigation, put it right underneath the course name, right? So into the courses, let's go to courses, and right underneath the course name, we'll load up that navigation. So there will be course navigation, right? That there it is, home, modules, assignment. So, and it highlights as this changes, right? It changes over here. And we would have routes on the right-hand side that would either render the home screen or the module screen or the assignment screen or the grade screen based on this map here. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I'm gonna stop here. And so we'll continue. We'll pick up again later on Monday, right? And we'll keep working on some of this. But if you could please, work on all the assignments, get them all done by this weekend. I mean, I already pushed a lot of the code already. Feel free to reuse that as your own. I am going to push now the up to this point the work that we've done in Kanbas, right? If you could get that going at least up to the point of the home screen, right, with the code that I've shown you, and start bringing at least the Kanbas navigator, right, with the CSS. Bring in the course navigator again with the CSS, right? If you have course navigation specific CSS, added directly under here under course navigation, add the CSS right here, index.css, that is specific to the course navigation, right? And it only needs to live here. And then you can import that, right? You can say import index.css, right? Okay. And you can style it right there. So any overrides you might have done, right, for Bootstrap, add all the CSS classes that you need. And if you could advance on that, that'd be great. All right. All right. That's all I had for you. Any questions?
I have a quick question. Are we expected to fully fledge out each of the pages or just do as much as what the screenshots display?
As much as the screenshots display. I mean, whatever you had implemented in the previous assignment that you had already styled, that you had already had as HTML, you're going to bring as much as you had done then, right? Which probably will be more than what is shown here. For instance, in the assignment editor, also in the modules, for instance, I only show the title of the module. I don't show the overall content. So that content could be static, right? Since we don't have that data. We only have the title of the modules, right? So you already have that implemented in HTML in the previous assignment. So bring that over. But you could also bring over whatever was under the modules. And again, that could be static because we don't have data for that, right? So that could be, but the titles could be dynamic because we have the data for that, right? We do have the data for the modules. Same thing for the assignment editor. The assignment editor only does looks at the assignment name, right? But in your assignment implementation, you had many more fields. You had checkboxes, you had date pickers, you had a whole bunch of other stuff, drop downs. Bring all that in, put it underneath here. But the only one required is the input field for the name. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Says the question is, should we have only one CSS file? No. You can have a global style sheet, style.css, like we did in the assignment. But then each component, it's best practice that you break out the CSS that is used only for that component into that specific CSS file, right? Eventually, when this gets built and deployed to Netlify, all this gets bundled into a single set of files. So there'll be one single JS file, there'll be one single CSS file, but that is done by the build process. You don't do that, right? You break it out into as many pieces as you want, right? So that, again, to tackle the complexity of large applications, you break it out into small constituents. Eventually, the build, when you deploy this, the npm run build, what it does is that it collates all the JavaScript into a single JavaScript file, right? And it collates all those CSS files into a single CSS file, right? But we don't develop like that, right? We split it out, right? Again, to deal with complexity. Yeah, computers don't need to deal with complexity, right? They can work with everything all at once. All right, anything else? All right. Thank you, everyone. Good night.